And you're live.
Hi, and welcome to this QuaranCon2022 panel, Mythological Creature Feature. And do you like a phoenix? Do you rise? Do you prance like a unicorn? Do you need a full body wax around about full moon? This is the panel for you. And I'm EM Faulds, and I'm moderating this panel. I'm a writer and a podcaster, and it says here, mention the book, you idiot. Okay, so I've got a book apparently coming out next week. Here's the cover. It'll be in an ebook format. If you go to ghostmothpress.com, you can find out more about that. Now, we've got a great panel coming up. We've got Mythological Creature Feature Battle Royal Championship Smackdown. Now try saying that 10 times. But like the responsible adults we are, we're going to do some serious questions first, and then we're going to go towards a little bit of a mix-up, a little bit of a fight, a bit of a scrap. But before any of that, please listen to the safety announcements for your comfort and that of your fellow passengers. If you go to QuaranCon website, you'll find out all about the other panelists and other panels that they're showing. So www.QuaranCon2022.com. And if you add /book sale, you get some really cheap and cool books and the ebooks book sale. So 99 cents, and or some of them are even free, I believe. So discount books. We all love a bit of that. And there is merch and anthology. They've even got a coffee button, so you can buy them coffee to say thank you for all their very hard work, and catch up with everything else. And also, please read the code of conduct, which applies to all of us on the panel and everyone doing a comment on the live YouTube. So without further ado, we're going to welcome the panelists that we've managed to assemble. There's a few of them, so we've got another one coming hopefully in a minute, but we're going to welcome Alex Dunne, Patricia A. Jackson, Susana Imaginário, Gareth Hanrahan, Daniel Potter, and hopefully Kevin Potter will be coming in a wee second. So welcome to you all. And I'm just going to ask you some icebreaker questions. You can talk to me about your books in a wee second. But first of all, I want to know, what's your origin story with mythology? When did you first get interested in creatures and myths and all these kind of gods and magics and other sorts of things, and cryptids and cryptids? What was your origin story for this? How old were you? What were you doing? So if I can start with Alex, because you're first on my screen, I can see.
Lovely, yeah. So yeah, I was one of those kids who was obsessed with reading encyclopedias at night. Very strange, I know. But I remember I used to love getting my hands on any kind of encyclopedia, and I put no distinction between what was actual fact and what was myth. So I remember getting, I think it was the Usborne books of myth. And yeah, and there were these encyclopedias that would tell you about different myths and legends and creatures from around the world. And I just fell in love with that sort of stuff. Like, I've always loved the idea of the world being a little bit more magical than we think it is. And this was also backed up by a bit of an obsession with Fortean TV. I don't know if anyone remembers that. It used to be on British TV back in the 90s. It was like an Anglican reverend used to present it, and there was all stories about things like the Chupacabra and Bigfoot. And I was just obsessed with it. I loved it. I really always loved this idea of there being something just a little bit magical outside of the ordinary.
Excellent answer. So who should we go to next? Let's say I can see Patty. You're kind of, we're going anti-clockwise around for me. So what age were you? When did you get into sort of mythology?
I was probably 8 years old. I fell in love with Margaret Stewart's books, and she always had horses. So I was bitten by the horse bug at a very young age, and it hasn't let go, as you can see. And Pegasus, centaurs, all those kinds of things were just wonderful. Kelpie. I always hoped that I could find a Kelpie on the beach, because I would show that sucker who could ride. But in any case, I was 8 years old, and it was horses. Still is.
Brilliant. I love that it's continued through your actual real life and not just writing, which we all do here, but yes, excellent practical applications. So Susana, we will go to you next. What were you doing when you first got interested?
Very, very young. I always remember being fascinated by the idea of mythological creatures, gods and aliens. I don't know. Ever since I learned how to read, I would always go for the stories that had some sort of mythology. Not dragons. I was never quite a great. Didn't have to be dragons. Any sort of mythological creature would make me happy. And then I don't know. I was like 8 or 9 years old when I watched Clash of the Titans, the old version. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. And from then on, I just wanted to learn more.
Absolutely. I remember that as a classic. And, the Ray Harryhausen claymation certainly helped. Go to Gareth. Gareth, now, can you tell us your age and where you were?
I'm trying to recall. I can remember my mother gave me this book of different myths and legends from across the world at some young age. I'd have been 7 or 8, I think. And remember looking at the illustrations from it. But it was when I was a bit older and got into role-playing games that went from sort of a passing interest into this all-consuming desire to find new monsters to throw against my players. So I went around looting world mythology for things with teeth.
Things with teeth, excellent, a good choice. And Daniel Potter, please tell me.
Well, when I was a kid, I was a book vacuum cleaner. We would literally go on vacation for 2 weeks, and I would bring a paper bag full of books, and I would read one or so a day. We did a lot of driving trips and that sort of stuff. And I'd make myself very car sick. So I kind of just inhaled books. And really my fascination with mythological creatures probably also came from those early inhalation of books. Included a lot of RPG books, which I didn't have nearly as much opportunity to actually play as read. And I remember I was very obsessed with reading World of Darkness and those mage and werewolf books quite a bit, cover to cover. And I still have them over there, just shelves of supplements that I would inhale. And I've always loved non-human characters, and and so that's what I drift towards in fantasy writing the monsters, or in the case of some books, the familiars.
Well, we'll talk more about books in a wee second. Kevin, can you hear us?
I can, thank you.
Oh, and we can see. Hey. You're just in time. We've just come to the first question, and it's your turn to answer. So I'll repeat the question, just to be fair. It was, what age were you? What were you doing about the time that you first got into mythological creatures and mythology in general?
Probably 7, maybe 8. It kind of began when I first discovered the original The Hobbit cartoon, and I sort of fell in love with dragons from there on. And it really just got worse after that. I spent a lot of time delving into a lot of dragon mythology and a few other things like the She from Irish myth and things like that. And I was going somewhere with that. Then I got into Dungeons and Dragons when I was a teenager, and it was a done deal from there.
I think that's fairly common response from guys here today, especially. So I'm just going to quickly ask everybody watching if they've got any questions, just try and get them in as quickly as you can think of them, because the second half will be a little bit chaotic perhaps, so I might not have as much time. So as soon as you can get them in, please do. Now, moving on to question 2. Okay, so yeah, I mean, obviously now we want to talk about your own writing and your own work with your own do you use a lot of mythological creatures in your work, and how did you were you thinking about using the creatures as a device, or was it always that you were going to write a book about them and you had to fit the plot around the creatures, if you know what I mean? So we'll start again with Alex. We'll go around the same way just each time, so you know when your turn's coming.
Yeah, I think I do a bit of both. So my first book is coming out this year with a small press in Ireland called O'Brien Press, and it's a children's kind of middle grade fantasy adventure set on Halloween, and it's the time when the trooping fairies come back to their ancient stronghold to hold their revels, but along the way they wake up a bunch of different malevolent creatures who are out to sow a bit of chaos. So I always knew I did want to include them quite heavily. I will say that I sort of made the plot, I kind of made the plot fit them. I knew I wanted to bring these kind of creatures in and retell them in a way that kind of honored the ways I've heard the stories my whole life, but could kind of fit into a modern setting and make it work. So for me, I think in that case, it definitely was something where I made the plot work around them. I've also featured creatures in a few kind of short stories and things like that, and I've taken that from a much more approaching it from the creatures as a character and trying to kind of understand, these are not human creatures, but who are they and how do they interact with the world? So really, for me, it can be a bit of both, but definitely for the children's book, I wanted to give it this sense of adventure, and it felt like the more of these kind of creatures I could bring into it, the more exciting it would be.
Yes, I mean, I can imagine young me being very excited about lots and lots of different creatures. And let's ask Patty, you're next. And so creatures first, or plot and then creatures?
Creatures first. I'm always character first as well. I love horses, as I said before, and while I'm fascinated by the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, I'm much more fascinated by their horses. Coming up as a kid, I was an only child, so my horse was my confessor, was my best friend, and the best boyfriend that I ever had, because he never failed and never judged me, and that's why I love them so much. They're such wonderful creatures. So I just thought in my mind, what would the mounts of the 4 horsemen be like? Where did they come from? So the premise of my book is called Forging a Nightmare. The nightmare are actually created from human souls, condemned human souls from hell. And some have personalities, and some, depending upon the bloodline, can actually maintain a human form. And that person becomes the mentor, confessor to the protagonist of the story. And what would their special abilities be, such as their magical abilities? They can float above the ground. They can go across water. For those who are the Dungeons and Dragons fans, you know that you have the horseshoes of Zephyr, and the nightmares have that effect all the time. And the fallen angels who forge them will fight over the nightmares who can maintain their human form, because they're a very special bloodline that goes back to Adam and Lilith, not Adam and Eve, Lilith, who was the first lady of Eden. So I just find them fascinating, and horses are my world. Excellent.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack in there, but I will mention that one of the comments we have is that Kat H says, love that horses were a gateway drug to fantasy. For Patricia, I totally get that. There you are. They're a gateway. Now, I believe that someone has also said their favorite mythological creature is the jackalope and deer foxes. Yes, very good. And dragons, obviously. Dragons are in there. Now, back to the questioning. Who is next? I think, Susana, we were with you next then. So creatures first, plot first.
Plot first, I think. Well, they kind of came hand in hand. When I when I decided to use gods as characters, and I wanted to write their story in their environment, so of course I had to bring lots of mythological creatures into their environment. And from there, you just develop their personalities, how to fit within themselves. It was a lot of fun, but yeah, I have a few favorites, somewhat harder than others. I remember the first draft, I wanted to include Zephyr, and I could not for the life of me personify the wind, so I gave up on that. But creatures like centaurs, satyrs, nymphs, they are a lot of fun to write.
It's very much from the sort of the Greek classical myth then.
Yes, mostly, but you know, I will also have several. I have manticores, that's Persian, have a few from Norse mythology. Fenrir is a proper character. Don't want to spoil too much.
Yeah, so you've got a lot of choice there. Excellent.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to the sort of the boundaries between religion and mythology in a minute, but let's go. We need to ask everyone else a question first. Gareth.
For me, it would depend very much on the story. If I have an idea that that revolves around a particular mythological creature, then yeah, you start with that. You start with the associations and concepts there. If I'm doing something, if I have like a different plot and I'm just throwing a mythological creature in, it's normally because I want to basically hijack that creature's associations and take advantage of what the reader already knows. So, for example, if you have if I'm doing a story and it says a maze there, I can throw in a minotaur and instantly the reader's plugged into all the myths about the minotaur and so forth, and you basically get to sort of surf on this accumulated cultural knowledge about that particular monster, as opposed to creating something new from scratch.
Excellent.
So yeah, depends.
What do you use in your books? Got a Prayer and remind me of the next two.
The Gutter Prayer, the Shadow Saint, and the Broken God. Most of the monsters there are either sort of the mythological ones are sort of very much sort of from left field. Like I've taken ghouls, like mainly from Lovecraft, and they have a long cultural heritage. I've got some Babylonian stuff, but I've changed it so much it's very recognizable. Like that was my starting point, and I sort of warped it around. There are dragons in there, but again, they're not sort of conventional dragons. They're more like fallen angels. But other stuff like I've done, I played much more straight. Like I did a lengthy Dracula espionage game where we actually went to rewrite the text of Dracula and unredacted that in all the bits that were officially taken out, and that was playing with vampires as like traditional and straight as we possibly could.
Awesome. Now, Daniel, your next, plot first or creature first? When you were starting your works?
All my three series are all based off of we've got a mythological creature and the story comes from there. So I start from a creature concept and then characters and all that sort of thing. Freelance Familiars is about wizards and witches familiars. Then Rise of the Horned Serpent is dragons versus sky pirates, and then Full Moon Medic is about a paramedic werewolf and the inherent juxtaposition of that. So for me, it's the creatures always start as they're usually a part of the main character in a fundamental way. Either they are the creature, or they start with a direct interaction with that creature character. And I love taking the myth and then taking the familiar and remixing it a bit into something that's even more interesting, and going from there and looking at what people have done with them and then doing something rather different. my dragons are basically mineral elementals in one series, and in another series the dragons are interdimensional, they're fourth dimensional entities that are quite scary. Yeah, I start with the creatures.
Very definitely, by the sound of it. All right, Kevin, is he there? He's there.
Yeah.
He's there. Good. Okay, you're muted at the minute by my screen, but if you could tell us, do you start with the creature and base the plot around it, or the other way around?
Yeah, sorry about that. Be having some connection problems. So for me, at least in my published work, I have some other stuff that's not out yet that is a little different. But for my published stuff, it always starts with the creature. My readers, some affectionately, some not so much, refer to me kind of as the dragon guy, because that's really what everything I do revolves around. I set out to a number of years ago. I kind of lamented that there wasn't very much fiction told from the perspective of a dragon, and that's something that I always wanted to see. So I just made that decision that, well, if nobody else is going to do it, then I'm going to. So I designed this series that revolves entirely around dragons. The very beginning of the first book, humans are kind of still around, but by the end of the first book, it's really just the dragons. And I wanted to create a really...
I believe Kevin's frozen for me. Is everyone else?
Yeah.
Oh, unfortunate. Hopefully he'll be back in a wee second. But yeah, I'm getting the very strong impression that for a lot of you, it's the creature is telling you the story, and then you're just more or less having to work with them to get it written down. So the next question. We're going to go back to that question of the difference between mythology and religion as far as these things are concerned, because obviously we're playing with what is someone else's culture in a way. So we kind of have to draw some lines between what is acceptable to change, what is fine to just, take and run with, and where do you put that line? I know it's a tricky question, Alex, but you're going first.
I love that I get all the hard ones first. No, I think it's a great question, actually, because it's something I do think about a lot. I will say a lot of the stuff I've written has been from Irish mythology, and I feel like I can take some liberties. But what I like to do is sort of approach it from a space of being respectful, because much like what Gareth said, like, you do want to be able to play with things and make them your own as well. But I think that it's also kind of important to acknowledge the culture where stuff comes from, and really kind of keep elements that are important to that in there going forward. The other thing is, there is a line between things that are now officially in myth. Like, I think we can all agree that, ancient Greek myth, no one's really still, well, maybe some people are, but very few people are still worshipping ancient Greek gods and things like that. But there are still cultures alive today that still, revere a lot of these creatures. And I think that it is something we have to be careful and respectful of. We've all seen stories of people appropriating like Native American myths and things, and sort of not realizing that a lot of these are still actually living traditions. So really, for me, it's just do your research, be respectful if you're going to take an element from a culture that isn't yours, and especially if it is a culture that is still has a living tradition of these things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So Patty, what do you have anything to say about that?
I always tell my creative writing students that religion and faith are separate things. Faith is your belief in something greater than yourself, whatever that might be. And religion is how you practice that faith. And that's why people get mad at each other, because your church is on Saturday versus mine, which is on Sunday, which is just silly. And Alex, I have a kid who worships Freya, and I have a kid who worships Poseidon, believe it or not.
Nice. Okay.
And it's really super cool. And what it's about is being in the room with these people who can have all these different beliefs and be understanding of it and being able to hold it in your head. That's the problem with the world. People can't hold 2 different or 3 different thoughts in their head to be respectful. When I did my novel, Forging a Nightmare, I set out to break the Christian religion. Someone had told my mother that she was not baptized correctly because someone sprinkled water on her forehead versus drowning her. And that was a declaration of war for me. And I went after the Christian mythology quickly. And when Daniel was talking about the arena being a cathedral and breaking the glass out of the cathedral, I started to giggle because in Forging, I have a nightmare drinking out of the baptismal font because she's being very disrespectful. So I think you do have to maintain some respect. But at the same time, we have to be able to laugh at ourselves and to break some things because you need to be secure in who you are and what you are, because someone will always challenge you. And what are you going to do? Back down, attack with violence? What is it going to be? For me, I'm out to break the Christian mythology as best as I can. How dare
presumably, presumably you have Christian background yourself. So like, it's not like you're going after someone else's religion.
Absolutely. And I was, unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, I was privileged enough to be in a Catholic school until I was, in the 8th grade and all the way through high school as well. Almost went to a Catholic university. So, and my mother was Baptist. So it's just a crazy swirl of a bunch of things. Yeah, take yourself seriously, but don't enforce on other people. That's a real problem for me. Don't jam it down someone else's throat.
Okay, Susana, have you got something that you want to add that's different or a different perspective?
Well, I've consciously I decided that I would leave Christian mythology out of the whole series, and for the most part, I try to be faithful to the characters, to the gods. There's only one character, an Egyptian goddess, that I just completely created almost from scratch. I'm just borrowing the name pretty much. So if that offends someone, apologies. But yeah, I treat the stories, I love the myths. So I try to be respectful to the lessons they teach us and just adapt into this new story, make them my own. It's a bit, yeah, I guess I am. This is my own approach. I'm using their names, their characteristics to tell a different story, but still faithful to the characters.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes. Gareth, do you have any particular ways you do things like that?
I guess the biggest thing is just delving into the research so you know what you're playing with. That, like, a lot of mythological monsters and concepts are so divorced from their origins that what most we understand about them isn't necessarily where they came from. And if you're going to use a particular monster or myth, you look at the older versions. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to be respectful of those or only stick to the original concepts, but just know where the ideas came from and what associations they have for people. Like the example I keep across lately is the D&D Lich has its life force in this vessel, like soldier, and the D&D concept for that is the phylactery. The phylactery is a Greek word meaning amulet, but it came to be associated with these Jewish, I can't pronounce the second, these prayer amulets. So there's this sort of anti-Semitic vein of Christendom that the using this Greek word, which has come to associate with the Jewish concept for evil monster, is questionable. So in a lot of books lately, that concept has been sort of changed away from the word phylactery. So I was utterly unaware of that when I used phylactery in one of my books, and I've sort of quietly shunted that term into our use in my stuff. But at the same time, I don't think that's. You want to be careful to avoid give offense, but give offense if you want to, or don't let that stop you if you have a strong concept for what you want to do. Does that make any sense at all?
No, it does. It does. Daniel, you're up next.
I mean, I've definitely been struggled with this. My second series, The Rise of the Horned Serpent, uses a blend of, for its world building, uses a combination of Shinto, Japanese, and Native American myths. And because I was interested in both, and I tried to be as careful as I could with the Native American influence. You know, there's so many tribes and there's so many myths. You're not taking from a specific tribe, even no matter how you with available published, it all sort of like blends together a bit. But the important thing is you don't want to punch down, right? You don't want to, you look at where your culture is, and you don't want to cast another culture's myths in a nasty light, right? You don't want to denigrate those, especially those that are those active beliefs. While if you take your own beliefs of the dominant culture of European descent, and you're part of that culture, well, you can do whatever you want with them. And so that was just doing that series was a big learning experience for me, but also hard. And so with Full Moon Medic, which I wrote after that, I've pretty much like, there's everything sort of comes together in this pot in your head, but I do lean more on the European mythology than native myths with that, and that's resulted in something I feel really good about. While Horned Serpent, I'm like, it's cool, but
it's a learning process. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you think, well, that was just something that I wrote at the time, and I might do the same today. But
I think I did it pretty well, but
I'm sure
it's not a popular enough story that I've ever gotten like a native reader to come back at me and say whether I did it or good or not, or it's very well divorced, and so the comparisons were more in my head than what comes across in the page. So,
but yeah, that's probably the most important thing, I suppose, is to think, if you're writing fantasy, can you make sure that you don't make it obviously.
I mean, I have Coyote as a character, and so that's definitely like, oh, that's a signifier for he's the most appropriate character probably ever. But where's that line? And native people individually are very different on where that line is. So you just have to be careful, awareful, and somebody calls you out on it, you're like, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I'm going to move on quickly to Kevin, because we're running into our battle time. So Kevin, did you hear the original question? Would you like it repeated?
I apologize. I only heard part of it.
Okay, so when we're talking about mythology and religion, and being careful about where we draw the line between using someone's religious beliefs or mythological and cultural heritage as opposed to something which you feel safer with. So where did you draw that line?
Wow, that's a tricky one. I can't say that I've ever approached anything, at least in my published work, that would need any extra level of care, really. As far as the mythology stuff, I take a lot of liberties, and I acknowledge that. But as far as the religious stuff, I do have the beginning of a series that I have not published yet that goes really deep into subverting some Christian beliefs. And I think in some ways I have to be careful about that. And in other ways, I just have to accept that I'm going to get some backlash. And I guess that's the balance for me, is going into it with intention and knowing okay, this is going to give me backlash, but this is why I'm doing it. And either I'm going to do it anyway, or it's not worth it. So I need to find another way to do what I want to do.
Exactly. That is a really good answer. So you're kind of going in eyes open. That's exactly what I think is useful. Okay, well, should we start our little mythological creature feature battle royale smackdown competition? I think so. All right. So we're going to just quickly go through and just introduce your character and your champion creature, as it were, with just a little bit of background on where it's come from, so that everyone's on the same page. Don't go too long into it. So Alex, you're first. Who have you chosen?
So as I mentioned earlier, I do quite like the line between what are sort of cryptozoological creatures and what are like mythical creatures. So I have chosen the Yeti as my champion for several reasons. He is the guardian of the Himalayas. So he comes from Tibetan and Nepalese tradition. And I like that he is clearly so incredibly stealthy that he has existed to this day with no evidence of him ever being found. So I feel like this is a good, attribute to have in a battle.
Mm-hmm. I like it. Okay, so you are going to be creature number 1. All right, Patty, you're number 2. Who have you chosen?
I'm going to go with the Kelpie, because anybody who's dealt with ponies know that ponies rule the world. Kelpies are wonderful in that they look super, super cute and they lure you in. And the moment you are on their backs, they take you into the ocean and drown you.
Yes. Okay, so Kelpie's number 2. So number 3, Susana.
I'm going with the Gorgon, so
Gorgon.
I can just stay at the back and glare.
Do you have a particular Gorgon? Is it Medusa per se, or another Gorgon, or is it the concept of Gorgon as a whole, or?
This Gorgon could be Medusa, to simplify things, because everyone knows Medusa. She's the most famous, so that's all right.
No,
She's in the
up to
book
you.
as well. No, it could be Medusa.
Okay. Yeah.
That's pretty much my skill. I just slither around and sneak up on people and look at them. Yes.
Okay.
That's the extent of my fighting skills, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What you got?
Yeah, because I've got one as one of the viewpoint characters in the Gutter Prayer, I went for ghouls, the corpse-eating monsters who lurk around in graveyards. They're originally from Arabic myth, as far as I know, from pre-Islamic stuff, but sort of like, crept into European stuff, and then through Lovecraft, I've turned to this underground corpse-eating horror things going. And
Right.
I like underground stuff and corpse-eating, not personally, but the concept thereof.
Very much. So you are number 4, and Dan, you'll be number 5. Who have you chosen?
So I was like, well, I need the most badass cat that ever mythically existed. So I went for the Greek chimera.
Tell me about the chimera. What's
the chimera has come in several forms depending which myth you're going for. The most classically considered is the lion body and head, and then the head of a goat that breathes fire, and then a long tail that is a snake, and is apparently tough enough to withstand aerial attack from a Pegasus and a guy with some pretty nasty arrows.
Very much so. Okay, so you're number 5, and Kevin, you're going to be our number 6, and you have chosen?
I'm sure no one's going to be surprised to find that I've chosen a dragon, but I'm going to go with a very specific dragon. It's comes from a combination of kind of my own thoughts on the matter and a little bit of European myth. They were originally just known as black dragons. I call them agate dragons, based on the agate stone, obviously. And they breathe acid rather than fire.
Ooh. So that's your main attack there. I'm just saying, guys, just you heard that. Okay, so I'm going to show you the very, very expensive CGI rules. Oh, yeah. So we're going to start with creatures 1 and 2. So that's Alex, the Yeti, and Patty, the Kelpie. And I have the first, and I swear I did not choose this spitefully, but the first arena that you're going to be fighting in is Loch Ness. I'm so sorry. But you know, someone's got to attack someone, so there might be a little bit of fighting on the shore. So I'm going to just roll the dice here. So it's odd. So I'm going to say, Alex, you get first attack.
Right. Okay. Well,
the Yeti can see each other at this point.
Right. So if I understand correctly, Patricia, you were saying that Kelpies are adorable looking. Now I feel like a Yeti, it's not called the adorable snowman, it's the abominable snowman, right? So I think he sees this Kelpie and picks up what I can only imagine is a large rock from the rocky shores of Loch Ness and just hurls it at the Kelpie.
Okay, Patty, what's your response?
My response is to pass gas after I've lifted my tail and run into the loch, carrying the Yeti to come after me.
Right.
We might have a bit of a standoff,
but secret weapon. The Yeti loves his solitude, and so does the Loch Ness Monster. Right. So I feel like he's got an ally here. The Loch Ness Monster understands the Yeti's need for solitude. So can I have a tag team up, or is this against the rules?
Well, let's just
say cheating. Oh my gosh.
Let's just say that the Kelpie realizes very quickly they're not welcome and has to run out again. And there you go. So now what, Patty? They've run out, and you're going to do what?
Is Loch Ness really there?
I mean,
it's like the Loch Ness Monster. Yeah, the Nessie has come up and
is he really
given you a nip on the withers. You've had a nip on the withers, so you're running out of the loch again.
Well, I guess at that point, I'm going to change myself into sea foam and just go across the loch.
Okay, well, there's not much of a fight to happen here.
No, but I'm going to get in the nose of Nessie so he can't breathe. And unless he gets
on my own again,
he's done.
I know, but at this point, the Yeti's just like.
I think at this point the Yeti has achieved his objective, which is I'm on my own again. It's fine. I'll just go back to solitude. Kelpie, you can live your life, be free.
And we're looking for a ventilator big enough for Nessie.
But yeah, unfortunately, we've apparently taken down poor Nessie.
All right, so this is officially not going to be a tie because I will not have a so it's an even or odd dice roll. So odd is for Alex and even is for Patricia, and it's odd. It is a number 3. So I'm afraid that the Yeti is triumphant, has run off back to the glens, I guess. Where
I mean, well, I feel like if he's vacationing in Scotland for the time, he can go off up to the Highlands for a while.
I feel there needs to be I think there needs to be a red flag on the play.
True.
Allies that came in. Pegasus was waiting, but we stayed back. There was no tag team.
I acknowledge that I am definitely a cheat.
Don't be too disappointed because there's always a wild card second chance for any of the first round runners up. Let's call them runners up. Right, okay, so the next is 3 and 4, who was Susana and Gareth. You are up against each other. So we've got a Gorgon and a Ghoul, and you are going to be fighting in a deep, dark, mysterious wood. Have at it. I'll see who goes first. So, Susana, you are odd, and Gareth even. No, I'm not making an aspersion here. It's even. So Gareth, the ghoul gets to go first.
Right, we are going to creep meeping through the forest, hiding in the undergrowth. And do we know it's a gorgon out there?
But you might have seen the rattling tail, the slithering scales, and come to some conclusions.
Okay. I can't recall if gorgons work this way. I know they do in some versions. But I will close my eyes and use my ghoulish sense of smell to home in on this thing. So I have to look at the gorgon and hopefully boy get turned still that way. And
Smart
creep
ghoul.
up and go. Ghouls are very smart.
You have sunk your claws into the flank of the gorgon. What does the gorgon do?
I have definitely sunk my claws to something that smells like a gorgon. I'm not going to go any further than that.
Did you catch the tail, or you managed to get to her face?
I suspect my scent isn't especially accurate, so whatever comes to hand.
So let's say the side into the ribs cage of the gorgon.
Okay. Well, she screams first because, out of nowhere. And she tries to look at what is attacking her, and nothing's happening because, the eyes are closed. So I guess she has no other choice but to start grappling and try to open their eyes, tries to find the face somehow, while still defending herself from the claws. Yeah, this is not going to end up well. But she's trying. She's trying. How big is the ghoul? They're quite small.
They're like stringy human size. So
Stringy human, yes.
Yeah. So like human scale were probably a bit lighter and desiccated. There isn't that much good eating on a corpse. Let's face it.
I should have brought the bow and arrow. So no, she's just trying to open his eyes.
Okay, I'm going to do a dice roll to see if this is successful. Odd is successful, even is unsuccessful. Even. Unsuccessful. All right, guys, you get to go and do another attack or something.
Right. In that case, it's just going to be sort of like jackal-like overbearing and try and knock the poor gorgon down and worry and claw and bite and kick and it's claw bite routines all the way down.
Eyes closed the whole time. Okay.
So you're basically being fed into a little bit of a shredder. You must get annoyed at some point. What do you do?
Well, I use my snake tail to try and push it away. That's and run at that point. Slither.
Yeah.
Snake whip.
I don't think my claws are sharp enough for that. And it's dark. Is it at night? Yeah.
It's a dark wood. So let's say shady and maybe lots of areas of shade to hide. However, we need a winner. We can't have another tie situation. Right. So I would suggest that at this point, I'm going to roll a dice of does the ghoul open its eyes and get seen and turn to stone or not? Okay, so evens the ghoul wins by default, or odd, they open their eyes. Okay. It's even. Gareth, you've just been the luckiest ghoul ever.
Hey!
You're through to the next round. Remember, there is a wild card option though, Susana. So maybe back.
I'm
All
pretty
right.
sure that's exactly.
Should have gone for a Shadowrun ghoul. They don't have eyes.
Really?
Well, the next one is Daniel versus Kevin, the Potter off. Let's remind ourselves that Dan, you are the Chimera, the lion, goat, fire-breathing thing, and Kevin, you are the actual fire-breathing dragon. And the arena is the Minotaur's Labyrinth. So, I swear I did not choose that on purpose. So I'm going to choose who goes first. So number 5 is Dan, you are the odds. And for every dice roll, you're the odds. And Kevin, you're the evens. Okay, so who goes first? It is at a 1. So it is Dan first.
I'm the oddest.
Go ahead.
Can I see the dragon?
Let's just say you bumped into each other going through the labyrinth, and you've decided to take against each other. Okay.
Lion looks to the goat head named Pete. Pete, get him!
And the
dragon fire breath.
Come on, we gotta get through. Gotta get through it. So, Kevin.
Okay. I think my first question is, how big is this chimera in reference to my
Just
dragon?
react. No questions. Just go. We've got 10 minutes, guys. I've got to go through a whole semi-final. Come on.
Okay, so I think I'm just going to rely on my scales to deflect his attack, and I'm just going to attempt to take a bite out of those heads.
Okay, biting. And what do you do there? What is your
well, what do I do in
well, we could say, is the bite fatal with the dice roll?
Oh, well,
you've got something sneaky.
He's going after one. He's got one head against my 3. So, you know.
So you're going to attack with the separate heads. So you're going to get attack the dragon. Bite his face, I guess. Or
okay, well, if he's coming at me with his dragon head, then my lion head will bite at his throat while my snake head comes around and injects poison.
Oh, poison. Now we might have to see if that's going to be a fatal poison injection, unless you've got anything up your sleeve, Kevin. All right, so Kevin, you are you're the evens. Dan, you are the odds.
I'm in the oddest.
It's evens. So,
oh, no.
Kevin, you are not killed by the poison, but you better hurry up and do something.
All right. First attack being unsuccessful, I'm just going to go ahead and breathe my acid breath right on him.
Okay, well, we're going to did that work? It's an odd. It did not work.
I'm a very tough hide.
I'm going to say, right, okay, so you guys are fighting and spitting and blowing acid at each other and fire and all sorts of that. We're going to see who won at the end of the day. It is evens.
Oh no! You failed.
Now we're going to have to go to a very, very quick second round. You get 2 attacks each, and I'm going to just dictate. Okay, so use your imaginations. But so, who won the first round? That was Alex.
I mean, yeah, by cheating, but yes.
Cheating. Yeah. And the second round winner.
Ghoul.
Ghoul. Okay, Yeti versus Ghoul, and you're in ancient Egypt for some reason.
Oh no!
Score.
Okay. And the person who goes first is Alex.
Right. Okay. So I'm in ancient Egypt. It's hot. I'm hairy. I'm very mad. I'm very mad. I'm going straight for the ghoul. I'm just going in with using raw strength, clobbering time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gareth, do you have a response?
I do. This is familiar territory for my guys. I'm going to use my ghoulish ability to leap and dodge and lure the Yeti into the city of the dead, into this whole labyrinth of tombs and graves, where doubtless there are more of my ghoulish pals, because ghouls travel in packs, and we will swarm this Yeti.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that you're toast.
Yeah, but at least I went.
I'm going to roll a dice. You're toast, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I went down fighting, and I'm happy with that.
Excellent. So that is the first semi-finalist, the ghoul. Who thought? Yeah. Okay, so the second semi-finalist battle is the winner dragon and the wild card. So the runners-up of the first round, 1 to 3. I'm going to roll a dice. Whoever gets it gets to go. So it is going to be the Gorgon comes back.
She's having a terrible day.
Okay, so the Gorgon versus the ghoul.
No, the dragon, wasn't it?
Oh, sorry, the dragon. Yes, the dragon. Yeah. Go for it. Okay, so first person to go is, it's going to be Susana. Susana, you get to go first. What's your attack?
Where's the arena? Is she in
Oh, the arena is a swamp. The arena is a swamp.
Okay. Well, there's a shadow passing overhead. She looks up, and hopefully she gets lucky, and the dragon looks down.
I'm sorry. I'm going to have to just do a dice roll for that. So, you are odds, Susana. You are even skip. It's odds. I'm sorry. You didn't even get a chance, Karen.
That's terrible.
We've got 4 minutes left. We need to get this done. So the final is going to be the ghoul versus the gorgon.
Again.
Okay, I'm going to do this by dice roll because at this stage it's getting ridiculous. Susana, you are odds. Gareth, you are order. I mean even. And 1 dice roll. Can we have a drum roll?
You're gonna have lots of bad drum rolls.
It's a 1. Susana, you win. Didn't even try that hard. Just to open the eyes in the morning and went, oh, I'm a winner.
Just learn. That's
Claire.
it. And just observe.
Exactly. Fabulous. I mean, it's quite hard to fight against someone who's been. Look, Gareth is just so into it. I love this commitment to the bit. Now, we don't have that many questions. But if anyone,
well done. It's frozen.
If anyone has any extra things to say, you have 2 minutes maximum to say it. So hands up. Anyone? Oh, Gareth's got his hands up. But yeah, anything that you need to say in follow up, or any extra thoughts you've had whilst we've been doing this ridiculous game? I mean, either.
Clearly, the Chimera should have won. Just
obviously, yeah, obviously. So I'm just going to thank my panelists. I'm going to thank you in order: Alex Dunne, Patricia A. Jackson, Susana Imaginário, Gareth Hanrahan, Daniel Potter, and Kevin Potter, who did not get as much of a look in as he deserved, but did a very good job anyway of getting through it. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoy rewatching this. Remember to go back and have a look at all the other panels. The next panel will be underappreciated genres, which sounds quite interesting. You're going to learn a few things, hopefully. And if you could choose any others, mythical creatures from the panel, who would you choose? I'm thinking that question's going to be slightly late, but anyone's going to jump in and say, if you choose the others mythical creatures, which one would you have chosen?
Now I want to kind of pick the gorgon.
yeah, seriously. I mean, it's just kind of cheating. Boop.
Yeah.
Don't have to do anything. Just, save versus death.
I could see a lot of uses for that in real life as well. It just, great skill.
Yep. Okay, so I'm going to thank you. Yep, thanked you all. That's good.
Thank you.
To QuaranCon. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you to QuaranCon for putting up with us. Oh, and I forgot, we were going to do a Monster-geddon, Monster-mageddon, if we got the chance, but we didn't get the chance. There wasn't the time. And we just got Gareth doing his physical comedy there. That's brilliant. Or is it just frozen now? We'll never know. All right, guys. I think that's
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And see you around.
Yay, good job.